Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our session this morning. And we're talking about water meter installation. It is becoming more and more prevalent. We've had quite a number of calls and people inquiring about the correct way of installing, and also quite a number of inspections that was done, which prompted this presentation this morning. So let's move on to our presentation. Right, what it's all about, or where it comes from, is in terms of legislation, the Water Services Act, as amended on the 8th of June 2001, specifically regarding the regulations relating to compulsory national standards and measures to conserve water. And in clause 13 of that regulation or that amendment, it says that a suitable water volume measuring device or volume controlling device must be fitted to separately measure or control the water supply to every individual dwelling within a new sectional title development, group housing development, or apartment building. Then it goes further to say also, as far as industrial is concerned, individual building having a maximum designed flow rate exceeding 60 liters per minute within any commercial or institutional complex. So we are going to deal mainly with the domestic situation today. So this is where it comes from and what the legislation says. Then in SANS 10252, water supply, part 1, clause 6.1.1, regarding the metering of water supplies. It says that 6.1.1, all water supplied from a main to an installation shall pass through an approved water meter that complies with the relevant national legislation. And that SANS code regarding meters is 1529. There's just a couple of examples of meters in the market out there. I think most of some of the most commonly known ones are the Sensors, Siemens, Kent. Then there's also Altechnic, Banggood, ASM. So there's quite a number of these installations, including obviously prepaid meters. So these are just a couple of examples of those. Then if we go to the installation part of this, SANS 10252 part 1, 6.1.1.2 says, when so required, the following shall apply. A, the water meter shall be installed in a suitable location where it is easily accessible and maintainable. And you will know, obviously, that in most instances, when we're talking about installation, there is obviously a need for access. For maintenance, repairs, whatever needs to follow afterwards. The installation conditions shall be in accordance with the manufacturer's specification. So that's one condition. You have to look and see what the manufacturer dictates how these things need to happen, but in accordance with the standard, obviously. And just keep in mind that a manufacturer's specification cannot override the SANS code, which is a national regulation. Meter installations size DN15 to DN40 shall include an upstream isolating valve. If not included in the water meter, an upstream strainer and downstream non-return valve shall be fitted. Now, if I can just maybe stop at that point a little bit. You're just going to be careful when you purchase a meter or when you get a meter from the supplier. We have come across situations where the meter might have a strainer incorporated in the meter, but in terms of the SANS code, as we spoke for meters specifically, it also says that that strainer must be serviceable. So even though there might be a strainer incorporated, make sure that that strainer is serviceable. In other words, that you would be able to clean it, open it up and clean it. So just be careful of that. And the same goes for the non-return. In some instance, we found that you order a meter or you obtain a meter, and what happens a lot is if you don't specify that you want a non-return included, then although there is maybe a place for it, it's not actually in the meter. So just be careful when you do get those meters. Make sure that that non-return, if it's incorporated, is actually fitted to the meter. And then the next thing is an isolating valve accessible to the consumer shall be fitted downstream of the water meter. So if we look at a couple of installations that we have come across in the recent past, you'll see there's a couple of incorrect ones. And as you can see, there's no isolating valves, strainers. There's a lot of things obviously not right. And the photo on the right hand top is one that I've come across fairly recently, where in one of the older buildings where they had a bulk meter. Now they have decided to go for the individual meter to do the installation. And it's quite obvious that the person that did this installation took a lot of shortcuts here. Just pulling out water supply, connecting the meter and going back, nothing else in between. So if we look at the correct way of installing, first of all, if you look on the far left, if I can just get my laser pointer going. So here's our water supply, the main supply coming in. Then first off, the isolating valve. The next component is the strainer, and make sure that obviously that strainer is installed in the correct direction of flow. Then our water meter, whichever water meter you have. Next item is our non-return valve, and then again the isolating valve. So this is the basic way to install installations in terms of the regulation as we saw before. So all of those components and all of those conditions in this instance has now been complied with. So please make sure that you do install this meter correctly. Then if we move on to the next thing, they say, where meters are exposed to the elements in boundary or yard installation, the meter shall be installed in a protective meter box or manifold assembly. So in other words, you do find a lot in driveways or close to the driveway where these installations are being done. Then they're not always protected, and make sure that that installation is protected, although it must still be, as you know, accessible. In addition, an additional isolating valve shall be fitted downstream of the water meter, either incorporated in the meter box or in the service connection to the consumer. So this now obviously depends on where this meter sits in relation to where the unit is. You find sometimes that all the meters are being installed together in a cluster, and then the draw of lines goes to the consumer. So when there's a meter box or something that, and it sometimes happens that these meter boxes are being locked, you need to take care and make sure that the service connection to the consumer also has an isolating valve, so that if something does go wrong, that they can stop the water flow and close. Then the next thing is plastic water meters shall not be exposed to direct sunlight and shall be fitted in a meter box or enclosure. Now we find this often, guys, where the meter is being installed. It's a plastic meter. It's exposed to the sun, and nobody cares about it. So just make sure that if you do install a meter or a plastic meter, it must be in a box or an enclosure to protect it from the elements. I've recently been to an installation where approximately a year, 18 months ago, these meters were installed, and already they had to replace 2 of these meters due to exposure and or damage. So just take care, and once again, this is all about compliance. Okay, so these are just some of the meter boxes that's out there in the market. I mean, there are, I think, quite a number of these things, and there's also manifold systems. So I think most of these you are familiar with. especially the left-hand one and the bottom one. Those you've seen or you see all over. So, and I think most suppliers also carry boxes, but if you do have or do need boxes and don't know where to get them, you can always make contact with one of us. We might be able to assist you as to pointing you in the right direction. But as you know, Google and all these guys, Professor Google is a very good friend of mine, and I tend to find a lot of these things through Google. So yeah. Right, moving along. Then 10252 goes further to say no connection shall be made to a communication pipe upstream of any water meter. In other words, no draw off for garden taps or anything like that is allowed before or upstream of the water meter. So just take care, and I think where you might have a bit of a challenge is in most of the older units where there's a garden, the ground floor units where they have gardens, you might have a bit of a challenge there because this person, the garden tap, might not be in the line that feeds the unit. So he would obviously try and not connect through the meter because he will have to pay for that water. Then it also says a pressure reducing valve shall only be fitted downstream of the meter. So again, it comes back to the order of the components and the way it's being installed. And we find it a lot where the PRV or the PCV is installed upstream of the meter, which is, as you can see, obviously the incorrect way of doing this. Then in SANS 10254, it sounds strange, but there is obviously a connection between the geyser installation and the water. The position of the pressure control valve shall be downstream of all hydro of terminal fittings, for example, garden taps and main fed toilet flush valves, like our master flush or flush master. So remember, if there are garden taps, it needs to be upstream of the PRV, downstream of the meter. So if we just go to the next picture, it's just a way or an example how this needs to be done. So you will see once again our water meter sitting there, isolating valve, then our garden tap draw off or high volume, isolating valve, and then the PRV. And just maybe a small reminder is that even though you might have a multi-valve like the one on the picture that has got a isolating valve incorporated, you still need to install a separate isolating valve before that unit. Thank you very much for your attendance. Please stay warm, stay safe, wear your masks, and we'll see each other again. Thank you and goodbye.